Hey Flux, so instead of making or sending images, I decided to make a short video to show you how I did this. So basically, the character follows the player's finger and acts pretty much the same way that it would with the A and D key on the keyboard. So if I'm touching on the right of the character, it's going to go right, and if I go left, it's going to go left. When I release, it stops and updates the animation. Alright. So I just tweaked some things from the 2D project, but if you're using a custom project, it's basically the same thing. Just use the 2D project as a reference. You're going to need two variables, one that is a float and I called move value, and this is what your add movement input scale variable is going to use, and a boolean that I called touch pressed, which is going to check if the player is touching the screen or not. So everything starts from the input touch, and when the player touches the screen, you set your touch to your boolean to true, and right away it's going to fire into a branch, which is going to check if this boolean is true or false. This sounds kind of silly because you just set it to true, but the reason for that is because after going into the branch and doing what it does, it goes into a loop and constantly fires back inside of the branch every 0.1 seconds until this boolean is set to false, which happens when the player releases the input touch. But we'll look at that after. So basically, you're going to be using a compare float to check if you're touching left or right from the character, and you're going to use a get input touch state to find this. So you can either find the get input touch state in your palette, or if you're right clicking in the screen, you need to get a player controller, and from the player controller you can get the input touch state. Otherwise you can't find it by just right clicking in the editor. The same thing for the convert screen location to world space, because the get input touch state is a screen position, so you need to convert that to a world location. And you get this node the same way. You have to pull it out from the get player controller or inside of your palette. Okay. And then you're going to break the world location and get the X value into the input of your compare float. You're going to do the same, not the same thing, but you're going to get the world location of your capsule component. So get world location capsule. You're going to break it and get the X value and use that into the compare float. If it is bigger, which means you're on the right, you're touching on the right of the character, it's going to set the value, the variable that you created, to 1. If it's smaller, you're going to set that value to -1, and then add a 0.1 delay that loops back into your branch. And this loop, like I said earlier, is going to stop once you release the input touch. Okay, it's going to set your boolean to false, and you're also going to set your variable, your float variable, to 0. And also important, update the animation. This update animation was just a copy and paste from this guy, which is just a custom event. Okay. And the add movement is powered by a tick. You could use a kind of loop like I did here if you don't want to use the tick, but I just used the tick for quick prototyping purposes. And right away you want to check if your variable is not equal to 0. If that statement is true, then go ahead and add the movement input. If it is false, do nothing. The reason for that is otherwise it would constantly be firing into the move input, and you don't want that. Also, you want to add your variable to the compare float, and that's basically it for this part. The other thing to add is when it updates the animation, I was using a velocity or length vector. I changed it to this. So compare if it's bigger than 0 or smaller than 0, which would be a true, my bad, running animation, and if either of those are false, which means it would be 0, you would get the idle animation, which stops. So that's basically it. I think I covered everything. If you have any questions, just ask me and I'll be happy to answer. Alright, have a good day.